Tucked away behind the Shadow Keep is one of the most beautiful and tragic scenes in Elden Ring. This is the Shaman Village. It has no enemies or NPCs. There are only 2 items to collect. It is quiet, barren, and only the softest, most serene soundtrack plays while you are here. The Shaman Village is just beyond the Hinterland Grace. Hinterland is a German word meaning land behind, which fits this secluded hamlet, hidden behind a statue shrouded by the size and might of Messmer's Black Keep. There are also 2 mounted tree sentinels who block the path. For being so sparse, this little settlement is strongly protected. As we enter the village, a rendition of the Elden Beasts soundtrack plays. But nothing bombastic, only the quiet harp strings. It's melancholic, reflective. As it plays, we walk up to a small tree to find the minor Erdtree incantation. It reads, "Secret incantation of Queen Marika. Only the kindness of gold, without order, creates a small, illusory Erdtree that continuously restores the HP of nearby allies. Marika bathed the village of her home in gold, knowing full well that there was no one to heal." So this Shaman Village is actually the home, likely birthplace, of Queen Marika. And even though there is no one left in it, for some reason she has blessed it, for all of time, with a healing golden light. We can see Melina use this incantation when we summon her to fight Morgoth. The description says, "Only the kindness of gold, without order." And I think we can surmise that means this was an action of Marika without her other part, Radagon. Radagon is described as the legal hound of the Golden Order and was always the one committed to order and the Elden Ring above all else. This being Marika's homeland, it makes sense she might act concerning it without her order-obsessed half, who we know from the Shattering that she can have big disagreements with. But that doesn't explain why she has bathed this abandoned village in light. Well, if we keep exploring, we come upon a statue of a woman amidst the base of a larger tree. Here we find the golden braid item, which reads, "A braid of golden hair, cut loose. Queen Marika's offering to the grandmother. Boosts holy damage negation by the utmost." What was her prayer? Her wish? Her confession? There is no one left to answer, and Marika never returned home again. So Queen Marika gave an offering of her own golden hair to the village idol, which could have been an actual grandmother at some point as opposed to just a statue in a tree. But we are left in the dark about the prayer Marika made. The item boosts holy damage negation, so maybe she was imparting some level of protection against holy forces, which is a tad ironic considering she became the apex of her own holy system. And there is no one left to tell us what Marika wished. The town is abandoned, and Marika never returned. With nothing left in the village itself, we must look elsewhere in the Shadow Realm to find answers. Now, the word shaman is only mentioned 3 times outside of reference to this village, but each instance reveals much about the tragic story of Marika and her people. Every other of these mentions of shaman is oddly related to jars. We can find a few jar-themed jails throughout the Shadowlands, and one of them, the Bonny jail, is located right next to an entire jar town, called Bonny Village. This village harbors a few key revelations. First, it has a few greater potentates, who we learn use their Bonny butchering knives to dismember human bodies that will fill the jars. Next, nearby the village is the Whipping Hut, where we find a spirit and the Tooth Whip weapon. The spirit is a Hornsent, who says, "For pity's sake, your place is in the jar. Nigh sainthood itself awaits you within. For shamans like you, this is your lot. Life were you accorded for this alone." And this is the crux. Marika's people, the shamans, were stuffed into jars by the Hornsent. It seems that the Hornsent thought they would turn them into saints through this jarification, but we can see the process is grotesque. One of the tools used is the Tooth Whip, which reads, "Whip bestrewn with rotting, misshapen teeth. Filthy and seething with disease, the teeth are embedded in the whip and dose the victim with deadly poison upon each strike. As the wounds ripen, they grow inflamed and ooze pus. The flesh of shamans was said to meld harmoniously with others. And the weapon's Ash of War reads, Painful Strike, a chastening whip strike honed to maximize pain. Temporarily reduces the rate at which stamina recovers. Thus does the pain encourage obedience. So even if the Hornsent were operating on some religious beliefs about sainthood, they were viciously torturing the shamans, emphasizing pain and obedience. We even get an example in Another Spirit of someone who really doesn't want to go into the jar and makes that clear. The whip reveals that at least part of the reason the shamans were chosen was because their flesh was said, at least, to meld harmoniously with others, making it a good base for blending bodies in the jars. If we go into the neighboring Bonny jail, we can see the process in practice. Firstly, if we take a closer look at the unfinished living jars, we can see that they look a bit like Marika, and they even sport a seal or rune on their forehead that looks like a mix of Marika and Radagon's runes. This is likely where those rune styles come from. The shaman are also blindfolded, and in this world where so much power is tied to eyes, maybe this is a way of limiting their power or ability to resist. From their melded bodies, we can see giant globs of flesh added to what could be a shaman base or main body. The innard meat they drop reveals a bit about them, reading, Scraps of flesh for filling great jars. Rancorous spirits cling to the pinkish-red, twitching meat. This is what becomes of the condemned, who get sliced up and stuffed into jars to become saints instead. It could be referring to the shaman as condemned, but since these are jails, it could also mean that other condemned prisoners are ground up into flesh to be added to shaman bodies in the jars. I could see it going either way, but I'm inclined to think that these condemned are additional people beyond just the shamans. We get an expansion on the idea of sainthood from the Great Jar, found in the Belurot jail, which is also filled with shaman jars, and it's at the base of the Belurot settlement, which seems to be the center of power for the Hornsent. The item reads, a great jar which fits comfortably over the head when upturned. Attire of the shamans who perform their worship at jails. They offer their prayers to the innards of the great jars, such that they might be reborn one day into sainthood. This is the cycle of death and rebirth taken into the hands of mortal men. There has been some discussion about this use of shaman being mistranslated, as in why would the ones getting stuffed into jars be going along with the ritual? But I think even if this is translated correctly, we could view it as when the shaman couldn't escape or resist, their only hope was to pray that something good came out of their suffering, and achieving sainthood could have been that prayer. So I think we can understand this regardless of the technicalities of it being translated perfectly correctly or not, but I don't know since I don't speak Japanese. And one final note before we turn to Marika fully, near the Bonny village is also where we can find the O Mother gesture. It sits in front of a small beheaded statue that looks just like the grandmother in the Shaman Village. This gesture is used to access the secret passage to the Shaman Village, where we can also find the message, Have mercy, for the spirited away shamans. I think these connections hint that Bonny Village might have originally been another shaman village, before it was overrun by the Hornsent. There's also a molted snakeskin near the O Mother statue, perhaps a reference to Mesmer. He is the one who guards the main shaman village in his black keep, and he is even trying to save the shamans within the jars. In a lower level of the keep, there is an infirmary where it looks like he is trying to treat the shaman in hospital beds. Perfumer contraptions are nearby, which add to the overall sense that this is a healing wing. I'm not sure, but maybe this is supposed to show Mesmer being here early in his life, maybe being born here, since I don't think he would let the jarring practice continue if he was here in the full power of his adulthood. The O Mother could be a reference from him to Marika, but it could also be a reference from Marika to her mother, or of any of the shaman to their mother or grandmother. It seems to be a matriarchal society. Marika's people were subjugated and turned into jars, but she either escaped this fate, or perhaps she is the one known success of the jarring practice. Maybe she is their awaited saint, born from a great jar. What we know for certain is that at some point, Marika was able to gain power. She obviously became a god, as we see this happening in the Divine Gate in the story trailer, and we are told that this land is where she became a god. There are also statues to Marika throughout the Shadowlands. They have their heads lopped off, mostly, but their existence in the first place points to some form of worship by the people of this land, the Hornsent. It is unlikely Mesmer erected all the statues when he came to purge these lands, but then the defeated Hornsent, who we know Mesmer beat on the whole, were able to destroy all of the statue heads, but none of the rest of the bodies. So, if Marika was their successful saint, maybe this is what let her enter the Divine Gateway, or maybe becoming a god is synonymous with becoming a Hornsent saint. For a time, while Marika rose to power, she seems to have been at peace with the Hornsent. After all, when we traverse these lands, they refer to Marika as a betrayer, and the story trailer talks of a seduction and betrayal. To betray them, Marika would have first had to be on their side, or at least pretended to be. Otherwise, we wouldn't expect a whipped shaman to be capable of betraying their oppressors. It would have just been an uprising as opposed to a betrayal. What or who Marika seduced is hard to say. It could have been a Hornsent deity. The story trailer has slight hints to the Glowmite Queen possibly being in the Divine Gate, or it even could have been the Hornsent as a whole people, as in they were seduced into worship of Marika, only for her to then turn on them. And turn on them she did. Never forgetting the torture of her people, Marika would eventually seal off the Land of Shadow, hiding it from the rest of the world. And even more so, she sent her son Mesmer to wage war against the Hornsent, to burn and destroy them, and we are shown ample example of this. In her dialogue about the Hornsent following Mikola, Leda explains,
"Wondering about the Hornsent, are you? True enough. In any other circumstance, he'd be at our throats. Long ago, Queen Marika commanded Sir Mesmer to purge the Tower folk, a cleansing by fire. It's no wonder the Hornsent holds the Erdtree in contempt."
We see now that the suffering of the Hornsent throughout these lands is not just more Golden Order conquests. No, this was personal retribution from the god Queen Marika. And Leda gives hints as well about how the Hornsent are not merely some randomly downtrodden group, saying,
"That aside, man is by nature a creature of conquest, and in this regard the Tower folk are no different. They were never saints. They just happened to be on the losing side of a war, but it's still a wretched shame."
Likely before this purge, but possibly after, Marika visited her village a final time, and could not help but leave an eternal healing spell on the now empty settlement. It was on this last visit that she offered her golden braid to the grandmother. Maybe she knew even then the danger of holy power, seeing the torment it spurred the Hornsent to commit, and wanted this offering to be a small symbolic protection to the place where she grew up. Despite never returning home, the events that shaped the beginning of Marika's life would forever guide her hand. In the lands between, she ruthlessly subjugated any and everything related to the Hornsent. Creatures featuring horns or aspects of the Crucible, like the Misbegotten, were treated at best as impure outcasts and slaves. The Omen had their horns excised at birth, killing most of them, or, if they were royal, they got to be imprisoned in the sewers of Leyndell for all eternity. Even Marika's own children, Morgott and Mohg, were cursed to live underground because they were Omen. Marika likely couldn't bear to see the reminders of her oppressors. Anything that resembled the Hornsent who tortured her people was excised, and this included her own children. Now we could say a war against the actual Hornsent who jarred and tortured her village would be justified, but there's no justification for the following torture Marika brought upon beings entirely separate in the lands between. Omen babies didn't deserve to be tortured to death to sate Marika's revenge. In her grief and trauma, she continued the pain that was wrought upon her, destroying new peoples in the same way that happened to hers. There may be even more influences of this jarring tragedy on the lands between as well. The process of grafting, such as we see in Godric, may be made more feasible if we believe the Tooth Whip item, which said that the flesh of shamans was said to meld harmoniously with others. Godric being a descendant of Marika means that he has shaman blood and body in him. With this body suited to melding, Godric would be more able to graft and take in other bodies. With grafting being a process usually reserved for trees, this could signify a connection between Marika's people and trees as well. Perhaps, the statue I assume is the referenced grandmother was once a living shaman who melded with the tree in the village. This could offer some explanation of Godwyn's body spreading through the roots of the lands between after his soul's death. We could even extend this to Rykard and his snake grafting or fusion too. We could keep going with even more implications, but to stay on topic, let's save those for future videos. Through this epiphany of Marika's past we have uncovered, we get to see why she acts the way she does. Born into a tortured, oppressed people, she barely escaped her traumatic homeland and rose all the way up to godhood. With new power, she destroyed her oppressors, but it seems there was no one left for her to save. She was too late. So instead, she endlessly persecuted her old oppressors, destroying and burning them in retribution for their torture, and going further to destroy any like them, even those a land away, newly born and innocent, even her own children. But even though she became the one with power, Marika would never escape heartbreak. She felt forced to exile her son Mesmer because of the snake inside him, and she could not save her son Godwyn from death. The Golden Order offered her no saving grace, and so she shattered the Elden Ring and was crucified by her other self, forced to wait until a lowly Tarnished, likely called back as part of her plan, would take the mantle of Lord and choose what comes next. Another of Marika's sons tried to walk this path of lordship. To change the flawed order Marika ended up rebelling against. In Miquella, we might see a mirror to Marika, one who seeks power and godhood after seeing those around them tormented and subjugated, either by the Hornsent for Marika or the Outer Gods, and even his own family's empire in Miquella. In following the path we see him take through the DLC, and abandoning his love along the way, is he not primed to commit the same mistakes? He might not be under the guidance of a flawed Two Fingers like Ymir says Marika was, but what if there are people who resist his charms, such as the Tarnished? How will Miquella deal with them yet avoid his mother's fate of subjugation? How can he break the cycle of hate when he has abandoned his love and he chooses as a king one who is in love with war? And one final lore tidbit of this whole saga that I couldn't fit in anywhere else: there is a form of jarification that still exists in the lands between. The jars we see in the base game were likely originally used in some process of simply bringing remains to the minor Erdtrees, so that bodies could be absorbed by the trees. However, they somehow took on life and were influenced by what was put inside them. I would have thought Marika would have been triggered simply by seeing living jars, but evidently she was okay with the practice as it happens here seemingly throughout the land. It is pretty different from the Shadow version though, since the people here are already dead when they get added to jars. No one is being tortured or grafted into living jar meat. Plus, there are people who willingly want to enter jars, the potentates seem to be kind, and the jars themselves are considered friendly. So while I am surprised Marika doesn't impulsively have an issue with them, they are definitely much more of a moral, harmless practice in this case. So rationally, it does make sense to be more okay with them. And another more okay form of jarification is what we do on this channel. But instead of dead flesh, it's item descriptions and environmental details that get melded together. If you enjoy the living jars of lore this produces, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Many more lore jars are coming. Thanks to my patrons for your support, thanks to you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next jar. Peace.